You're addicted to control, and it's destroying you. Have you felt this lately? That exhaustion, that endless loop of trying to manage everything, your schedule, your emotions, other people's opinions of you. You think you're building discipline. You think you're finally getting your life together. But here's what's actually happening. You're tightening a cage around yourself and calling it freedom. The trap isn't that you want control. The trap is that you think more control will finally give you peace. One more system, one more boundary, one more thing mastered, and then you'll rest. Except you never do. Because the thing you're trying to control is yourself. And the harder you grip, the more you fracture. Marcus Aurelius knew this. The most powerful man in Rome, with legions at his command, wrote in his private journals that the only true dominion is over your own mind, not through force, through understanding. But we skip that part. We hear control your mind and turn it into another battle to win, another front where we're at war with ourselves. You think the problem is lack of discipline, but discipline isn't what's failing you. What's failing you is that you've made discipline into a performance, a scorecard, a way to prove you're worthy. And every time you slip, every time you break your streak or lose your temper or eat the thing you said you wouldn't, you don't just fail the task, you fail the identity. You're not just someone who broke a habit. You're someone who can't be trusted, someone who's weak, someone who doesn't have what it takes. And that's the real trap. You've turned self-control into self-judgment, and now you're trapped in a loop where the tool that was supposed to free you has become the weapon you use against yourself. By the end of this, you'll know exactly why your pursuit of control became your prison, and the one shift that breaks you out without losing your discipline. Darius Kane sat across from me 3 months ago, and I could see it in his posture. Shoulders back, jaw set, every movement deliberate. He'd spent 2 years rebuilding himself. Morning routine locked in, workout plan precise. Meal prep on Sundays, journaling every night. He looked like the after photo. But when I asked him how he felt, he went quiet. Tired, he finally said. I feel tired. Not the tired you fix with sleep. The tired that lives in your bones when you've been performing for too long. He told me about his week, how he'd gotten angry at a coworker on Tuesday and spent the rest of the day hating himself for it, how he'd skipped his evening routine on Friday and felt like a fraud all weekend, how he couldn't enjoy a meal out with friends because he kept calculating macros in his head. I thought discipline was supposed to make me stronger, he said. But I feel like I'm one mistake away from collapse. I asked him a question. What are you actually controlling? He looked confused. My habits, my reactions, No, I interrupted. What are you trying to control underneath all that? Silence. Then, quieter. The feeling that I'm not enough. There it was. The thing beneath the thing. Darius hadn't built discipline to become free. He'd built it to escape the fear that, without perfect control, he'd be exposed as weak, undisciplined, unworthy. Every system, every routine, every act of self-denial wasn't about growth. It was about proving. And you can't prove your way out of fear. You can only exhaust yourself trying. Marcus Aurelius wrote something in his meditations that Darius needed to hear. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Most people read that as a command. Control your thoughts. Master your reactions. But Marcus wasn't talking about control. He was talking about acceptance. The strength isn't in forcing your mind to obey. It's in realizing that your worth isn't on trial, that you don't need to be perfect to be whole. Darius had built an empire of discipline on a foundation of self-rejection. And the cruel irony? The more control he exerted, the more evidence he created that he needed controlling. Every time he slipped, it confirmed his fear. Every time he succeeded, it was just proof he had to keep performing, or risk falling apart. What if, I asked him, you stopped trying to control yourself and started trusting yourself instead? He looked at me like I'd spoken another language. How do I do that? You stop treating your urges like enemies. You stop treating your mistakes like verdicts. You start seeing them as information. When you want to break your routine, instead of forcing yourself through it or collapsing in shame, you pause. You ask, what am I actually needing right now? Not what should I need? Not what would a disciplined person need? What do I actually need? This isn't permission to abandon discipline. It's the difference between discipline as a prison guard and discipline as a practice. One punishes you for being human. The other works with your humanity. Darius started small. When he felt the urge to skip his morning routine, instead of either forcing through or giving up entirely, he'd pause. Ask the question. Sometimes the answer was, I need rest. So he'd rest, without shame, knowing discipline includes recovery. Sometimes the answer was, I'm avoiding something. So he'd sit with that discomfort instead of controlling his way past it. Sometimes the answer was, I actually want to do this, I just forgot why. And he'd do it not as performance, but as practice. The change wasn't instant, but within weeks, something shifted. He stopped feeling like he was at war with himself. The discipline remained. The structure stayed. But the exhaustion, the bone-deep tired, it started to lift because he wasn't performing anymore. He was practicing, and practice has room for being human. Performance doesn't. Next time you feel that urge to control yourself, to force yourself back in line, to shame yourself for slipping, pause. Just pause and ask yourself one question. What do I actually need right now? Not what you should need. What you actually need. Then trust the answer. Even if it's not perfect, even if it's not what the disciplined version of you would say, trust it, because the goal isn't to control yourself into someone worthy. You already are. The goal is to live like you believe it. You're not who you think you are. The next video proves it.